It's time to ignite your soul and unlock your full potential. Join us on Beneath the Helmet, the podcast exploring firefighters' health and wellness. Hosted by retired Fire Chief Arjuna George, our podcast is the perfect place to start your journey towards becoming the best version of yourself. So come on, let's join the conversation and find out what sets your soul on fire.
All right, welcome back, everyone. This is episode number 49, Beneath the Helmet, on beneaththehelmet.ca. So today I got a chance to sit down with the author of this great book, Sister in a Brotherhood. This is Cindy Schooner-Ball. Sister in a Brotherhood, stories from the life of a female firefighter. So myself and Cindy are going to have a great conversation about her life and her experience growing up in the fire service, her writing this book to share with the world, but also more importantly, her next kind of encore passion, and that is promoting the fire service to both men and women, all generations, all ages, and just really exposing the benefits of the fire service to those who may be interested in doing that as a volunteer or as a career option. So I hope you enjoy this great episode. Sit back, relax. Until next time, stay well. All right. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I got another amazing guest on the show today, a fellow author. Today, I got a chance to sit down with a great conversation with retired Captain Cindy Schooner-Ball, who's the author of this great book, Sister in the Brotherhood. So I highly recommend checking that out. Some great stories she's sharing. So welcome to the show, Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Tell us a little bit about your story. Who's Cindy and how we're kind of get to where you are today?
Well, I didn't start out wanting to become a firefighter. In my time, as a little girl, that wasn't something that I was drawn to. But I grew up in a impoverished town neighborhood in northern Ohio. And I always say, maybe in the back of my mind, what clicked is I was 6 and my brother was 12, and we didn't have any money for Christmas presents. My parents didn't have any money. So the firefighters came to our home and they gave me my first doll and my brother a bowling set. And I always say, well, maybe somewhere in the back of my mind, that stuck. But I was raised by my sister and brother-in-law in Florida. So I've been in Florida since I was 11 to 13. I'd go back and forth. And then 13, they became my legal guardians. I was out on my own at 16, met a boy. We lived together for 12 years. And in the course of that time, I worked all kinds of jobs, banking and secretary and just anything to put food on the table, a lot of restaurant work. I did a lot of modeling in that time frame, but I always say I was a bank teller model or a waitress model, secretary, all of that stuff. In the meantime, my boyfriend wanted to go to fire school. He had been a forest ranger, and one of his buddies said, "You need to become a firefighter." So, long story short, I helped put him through school. He became a firefighter for a small apartment outside of South Florida. And I would go and visit him. And in the meantime, I wasn't 18 years old then. I was in my 20s and just kind of getting disillusioned with the way my life was going as far as what was I going to do for the rest of my life, because I found those jobs boring, actually. And I couldn't see myself being a bank teller for 30 years. So I'd go in and look cute at the fire station, look cute at the firehouse, and have dinner with him like all the girlfriends and wives do. And I was expressing my discontentment to the chief. And he said, "You ought to become a firefighter." Because at the point I was really, I pride myself on loving exercise, and I was doing a lot of races and working out and really strong and fit. And I was in my later 20s. And I looked at him like he was nuts. And I said, "Thanks, but no thanks." And the guys at the table said, "Hey, we'll help you. We know you're in better shape than most of us. Most of the guys we know." And I said, "No, thanks, but no thanks." And I say in my book, as the wheels of, fate happened, they turned. I ended up splitting up with my boyfriend, and then deciding what am I going to do. And I found myself in the unemployment office, which I always had a job. I wasn't I never had unemployment, but I saw a sign and it said, if you're an American Indian, call this number. And it just so happened my great-grandfather was a full-blooded Mohawk Indian. And I was ashamed of being an Indian because I was taunted and bullied, and my brother as well. Anyway, I don't know what happened there. But anyway, my mother had given me a letter that was signed, it was basically my great-grandfather had to go before a judge and say he was a full-blooded American Mohawk Indian. His parents had died in the cholera of 1800s. He was born on the banks of the Sandusky River. And the judge, signed off on it. And my mother gave me that letter saying, you might need that one day. And I'm like, no, I'm never using this, but I put it in a drawer. Here I am in the unemployment office, and I saw that sign, and I knew I wanted to be a firefighter, but I didn't have the money. I went to talk to the counselor there. She was great. And I said, look, I really want to be a firefighter. I have to go to the fire academy, but I don't have $100. It's $100. I drove a beat up Volkswagen that broke down all the time. So she said, fantastic, because that's kind of an odd request. They had a jobs program and all of that. And she just looked at me like, you want to be a firefighter? So they provided me with the means financially, and I signed up for the fire academy and got through that. And then at that point in time, I thought that was tough. I mean, I loved it, but in the state of Florida, you have to get your state of Florida fire certificate first. And then after you get that, and I passed, you have to start applying to all the different fire departments and find out when they're testing. That was, back in the days before, internet. I mean, now it's a little different.
Right.
But then you looked on the board at the fire academy, and they had little index cards or just a sign. These are the departments that will be testing in the next few months, and this is the procedures, where you have to call, fill out the paperwork, and sign up to take their tests. So I did that, and I stayed in the Tri-County area, and I did that for a year. And I knew I wanted to stay in South Florida, and I tested for a year. And every department then, you took a physical agility and a written and an oral. And according to your scores, you got placed on a list that was probably good for 6 months. So a year went by, and I got hired by Broward County, which was Broward County Fire. It was separate from Broward County EMS, and that's in South Florida. And then once I was hired, I was one of 2 women. And if I thought that the academy was tough, that was like kindergarten compared to this, because I had 5.5 weeks of, training in July in Florida.
Moderate temperature.
We had still bottles then. And, they put me through the ringer, and I loved every minute of it, but, 5.5 weeks. And if you fail any part of it, you're out. And the woman I got hired with said, if we're going to cry, which we never did, because she was a triathlete and I was in shape. She said, we'll do it in the bathroom, but we'll come out and we'll never let them see us sweat. So we did. And 5.5 weeks, and passed all of those tests. The last day was a full day of going through the maze and trying to find a coin and colored coin and all of that. So lo and behold, I passed. And chief, that was one of our training officers, old crusty guy, he was great. This is how different it was then. They put all the shifts, you have Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie shift. And they put all the shifts in a hat. And he said, okay, everybody come over here and pick out, just reach in the hat, and whatever paper you pull out, that's the shift you're going to go on. And so I pulled it out, and it was Alpha shift. And then you're on probation for a year. You're tested for a year. And again, if you fail at any point in time, you're not covered by your union at that point. You're just, you have to get through a year. And that started my career. And in the meantime, I had signed up for EMT school, because that was the golden goose then, to be an EMT. So I was going to EMT school as soon as I got, done with our 5.5 week boot camp. shortly before that, I'd go to both. I'd be training all day and then drive my car to the academy for EMT school.
Wow.
So I passed that. And then I just, I loved it. I never looked back. It's a fantastic career. And, people would always ask me, which is, I guess, kind of a roundabout way of writing the book, is I had, so many times I was the only woman for years, and particularly on the fire truck. And I loved to write because I had been loved to read since I was a little kid and loved to write. And when I was going for my fire officer 1, we had to take English comp, and it reignited my passion for writing. I had just hadn't thought about it, and I just started writing stories. And then, the process when I was getting close to retired, and then I retired. In the process of just moving up the ranks, my story is, I started out riding backwards on a fire truck, and then I was going to school for my fire officer 1. I was taking the driver engineer test. So I was taking the lieutenant's test. So I was an acting driver and an acting lieutenant for like 12 years on a fire truck. But in the meantime, Broward Fire and Broward EMS merged in the early 90s. And in order to really promote, you had to become a paramedic. So 15 years into my career, I go to paramedic school. And that's not for sissies either. But I love the medicine. It's not why I got into it. I got into being a firefighter. I love going in, burning buildings and all that, that adrenaline rush and all of that stuff. And I loved it.
Yeah.
But being a paramedic just added to it. And I ended up, I had a choice. Do you want to be a promoted driver or a lieutenant? And at that point I said, I'm a lieutenant. I want to take a lieutenant's position. So I was promoted to lieutenant. Then when I got my paramedic, I was put on a rescue truck. And I did a lot of time in very busy houses on rescues. I floated all over Broward County, which is a huge, backs up to Miami and Palm Beach. It's huge. In the meantime, I knew that I wanted to be a captain and run the house. And so I took the captain's test and ended up, making captain. And then I floated all over. So it was great. One day I'd be on a rescue. One shift I'd be on a ladder truck. Next shift I'd be on an engine. And so I had a very, very varied career and worked all over Broward and loved it. So
beautiful.
That's my message to particularly young females. But the story is go for it. If you're, if you think that you want to do something like that, go for it.
Beautiful. Yeah, it was quite the going through your book. It was quite the progression through your career, and I love how you kind of dovetailed it with stories and events and. Yeah, definitely brought you through a journey of your life, right? So,
absolutely.
So this was in the 80s, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes, I got hired in 1987.
So paint us a picture of what the fire service was like in 1987 compared to what you see in today's fire service.
Well, I
Culture,
think I would,
as well as safety, the whole gamut.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think my husband and I have talked about it a lot because, we met in the fire station and we just celebrated our 34th anniversary, which was great. Yeah. So, we talked about it and, people ask me that a lot because the 80s were rough for women to particularly be in male dominated field. I was lucky because our department was really young. It was volunteer and a lot of the guys were young. And I think they were a lot more accepting. You can do the job. Not to say I didn't have people, try to press me. The culture of the firehouse back then, as I say in my book, you got to have somewhat of a thick skin and you have to draw your line in the sand of what's going to be appropriate behavior that language or anything and what's not. And that's important. And so I did. And a part of that, I think for me, and as crazy as it sounds, is I wasn't 18 years old. I wasn't like a really naive 18-year-old girl, going into that profession. I was 30 when I got hired and I turned 31. I had been a model when I was 22 and I had worked in all kinds of jobs. So I put up with really sketchy men very young. And it really strengthened my resolve that by the time I got to be a firefighter, I wasn't going to let anything or anyone deter me. the firehouse culture was a lot different then. You could, the guys would have their lockers in their lockers. They'd have pictures of playmates and things like that. And some of the language was salty, but I drew my line in the sand of what I thought was appropriate at the time. And I will say it's kind of funny because I worked with some really crusty old chiefs that gave me the benefit of the doubt. And they were really good to me. So they saw how hard I worked and how much I wanted it and how passionate I was for it. And I think they were a little bit kind of amused that, who is this, this young woman that, what is doing this and doing it well. So they gave me the benefit of the doubt. I think the culture today, I don't know. I used to mentor a lot of young females as well as males and talk to them. And, don't get too familiar, stand your ground, be professional, because, I think it's something that men grow up with. They want to help you with everything. And I can remember, checking out the truck. I started the saws, and then when I was a driver, I was climbing underneath the truck, I was laying underneath it, checking the fluids, doing all those things, lifting things, checking generators. And sometimes at the beginning, the guys would say, well, let me do that for you, or let me help you. No, you do your job and I have my job. If I need help, I will ask you. And, I think that's a difference that you have to be strong physically, obviously, and mentally. And you have to know that, people have certain jobs in the firehouse and you need to be able to do them. Not to say that you can't ask for, assistance, of course, if you need, we work as a team, that.
Yeah.
And so that's different. That's my take on the culture today. Is I think it'd be tough. I've talked to some women today and I don't know, they're sometimes I feel like they're not standing up for themselves like they should. I'm not saying run to HR because, you have to be able to pull somebody aside and say, hey, talk to them. Don't just let, them all of a sudden get a notice that now you're going to go downtown. You know what I mean? And I think those are important things that people need to realize. Women need to realize.
Open up that line of communication and have that conversation.
Open up that line. Yes. Open up that line.
That single conversation could nip it in the bud right there. Right. So.
Right there, instead of, possibly somebody losing their career or, how that goes. But yeah.
When you say crusty chief, what does that mean?
Oh, a crusty. Well, I would say these were crusty. I worked with chiefs. One of them was, he was he was from New Jersey, Hackensack. He was a chief up there. And then we would get, the joke was a lot of the chiefs from New York would retire and they would come down and they would be our battalion chief, second time around. And I just had, these were men that, say I was 30. I mean, they were already, they were in their late 50s, maybe 60s, and they had been around. And when I say crusty, it's just they were crusty.
Seasoned.
Yeah, they were seasoned.
Yeah,
they were seasoned. And but they were good. They had good hearts. And like I said, they knew how hard I worked and how hard I wanted it. So they were, for the most part, really, really good to me.
Yes. So I'd love to hear what you're the most proud of through your whole career. You had lots of highlights in your career. Your story about your retirement was pretty awesome. So what would you say is the standalone proudest moment in your career? Is there something that sticks out for you?
There's a few things that stick out. Probably, the proudest is to be able to retire with having the full, retirement ceremony and have made it through unscathed and healthy and have, a good retirement to look forward to and all of that. Although, as I say in the book, my life turned upside down because, what I was not prepared for was the adrenaline rush and the camaraderie and all those things that you don't have after retirement. But I would say, the proudest would be when people would come into the station or they wrote letters. The chief would present me with letters and say, hey, this person, you saved, your crew, you guys saved this person's life. And either they'd walk in the station and thank you personally, or they would send letters up through the chain of command And I would read it, and it would, it's gratifying to think that, somebody was having a major health incident, and now you and your crew, because of their actions, they're walking around today.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of, professions that you can really say that.
Nope, that is true. Yeah, it definitely lifts you up and gives you a sense of purpose, right? Like
it does.
Yeah,
And it makes, all of the other stuff that you deal with that are not so, you're not going to save everybody. And that, I know that. And those are other issues you have to be able to deal with. And everybody works it out differently. But that's the way I looked at it. You do the best you can, you and your crew. You do, over 100% plus, and sometimes the outcome is good, and sometimes it's just beyond your control.
Well, you mentioned that you kind of hit your retirement healthy and in good shape physically and mentally. What was it that kind of kept you in that shape mentally and physically through your whole career?
I think because for me, working out, particularly working out physically has always been like a mental thing for me as well. I love it. I, jump rope, I do all that, and I love it. For me, that was a big part of it. I worked out before I got the job, obviously, in the fire service. And then, you work out on duty if you can. So, we always worked out. We had like these, old machines out in the bay where it's hot because, we didn't have the newest and greatest stuff, but, we would put on music, and after 4:00, after while we were preparing dinner and in between calls, we'd all go out there and we'd have our headphones on, and we'd all be out there doing something. Somebody be on the treadmill, somebody be on the elliptical, I'd be jumping rope. And, it was a really great thing. We'd work out, and, and then sometimes we would get banged out for calls, and, we'd be jumping on the truck and throwing our clothes on and jumping on the truck and responding. And of course we'd come back and finish the workout. Sometimes we were, we just kind of wanted to take a shower and have some food.
It's been pretty tough to do jump rope with a Walkman.
Oh, I didn't have a Walkman, but I had I had little headphones, but the guys were always amazed because I've jumped rope like a boxer for,
Right.
I love
Yeah.
it. So I
Nice.
could do it for 30 minutes, and then I do all the step ups off the back of the fire truck, and then, all that stuff, push ups and just old school stuff.
Yep.
Which is important. I mean, it's important, particularly with a job like that, but, it gives you, there was not an issue of me not being in shape. And that's important. I think in a job like that.
You mentioned in your book something about PTSD, and I think you wrote chapter 10, PTSD. Not us. And then you said, of course we do. Of course we all have PTSD. So what does that mean to you? That of course we all have PTSD.
We do. I believe PTSD has different levels. I believe that for some, the PTSD is just recalling particularly when you're in an area where they occurred, or certain sounds, or you're with retirees, or you're with people and we're all talking about it. Not everything's debilitating. I always say they're like ghosts in your memory bank. They come out, but what you choose to do with them is an individual thing. And of course, I'm really happy now that it's become acceptable for people to get help that need it, because so many suffered. Because in the fire service and rescue, you didn't say you had PTSD or you needed help. You just didn't. Now they had people come around, CISD people would come around when you had really critical calls or fatalities, particularly with children and things like that. They would come around, and you would be forced to go, which all the firefighters are like, we don't need to go to that. We're fine. We're good. But, and you also had to be careful because, word would get around that, maybe you weren't good to be, maybe they didn't want to work with you. So I've had people talk to me about all those things. For me personally, I just looked at it differently. I looked at it like, if PTSD, it means that, yes, a certain environment, you think about a call, or you're with people and we talk when we get together with retirees. I mean, we all have these stories. It's crazy, the things that you still remember so many years after your retirement. And I mean, and I worked in houses where you ran 25 or 30 calls a shift. And that's in a 24-hour shift. So you're running on pure adrenaline.
Coffee.
And you're running everything. Oh, lots of coffee. I should have bought stock in Starbucks.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that was my thing. But I think there are, and I'm writing another book on PTSD and for first responders. I'm working on it, and people have come to me with their stories and said to me, "Gosh, you know how messed up. We worked with people that it destroyed them, and I really wasn't aware of, a lot of the problems that people have really come to me now and told me that they're either dealing with now, or they're getting help, or they've had problems in the past. I mean, a lot of divorces, a lot of, alcohol abuse, that sort of thing, letting your health go. So it's a big problem that's now finally being recognized in the fire service, fire rescue, whereas military is a little different. And I had somebody explain to me, because we always kind of blew it off and said, well, we're not soldiers. We're not over in some, godforsaken place where people are shooting at us and we're shooting at them. And I had someone say, but Cindy, you don't understand. They do tours. They come home. We did 30 years or more of continuous. That has to have an effect.
Yep.
And so it kind of made me look at it a little differently.
Yeah, I had a recent podcast guest say pretty much the exact same thing, but the one element that he added was that it's in our backyard as well. It's not overseas like the military. We're actually fighting in our backyards for 30 years versus, some other country, right? So, yeah, it's powerful.
It is. And like I said, I look at it and I encourage people that, there are really great resources out there now that are anonymous. I did a podcast for such an organization that was, wow, they go all over and talk to, military as well as they do police officers and first responders. And, the help is out there. It's just a matter of, if you choose to get it or not. For me, I looked at it differently. And again, working out, I would, sometimes I said in the book, I would go for a nice hot run when I got home and, sweat it all out. Or sometimes I would go and have a cheeseburger, some fries, and either a Coke or maybe a beer, and then go home, go to bed, So, yeah, there's just different ways.
Yep. Okay. So you mentioned your retirement, and I know that's a struggle for a lot of people, especially if you've been there for almost 3 decades. Tell us a little bit about your retirement journey, the ups and downs, some of the challenges. Love to hear your experience and maybe some tidbits for people who are approaching retirement right now.
Well, one thing I learned and that I encourage, I'm hoping other fire departments will do, is they never prepare you for retirement. It's basically, okay, here's your retirement. And if you can have a ceremony, which I did, or, like other people, my husband, he didn't want a ceremony. During the COVID, I found out it ruined a lot of people. They were so upset because you would look forward if you want to have that ceremony your whole career, and they didn't get to have it. So that was really tough. What I think for me is, I was very thankful to have retirement, but at the time, we were all also on a journey to leave the state and go out to the Pacific Northwest and start a new life. And we had gone out there many times. My husband's from California, but we went out there. We have a lot of friends out there, and I thought, okay, this is going to be great. It threw me for a loop. It threw me into a deep depression because now I didn't have structure, and I wasn't in my home environment. I was in a completely new place, even though I had friends. I had never lived in, mountains, and I had never lived. I had lived in Florida most of my life, and and also the fire service gives you such a sense of security and family and structure. And then to all of a sudden not have that, it sent me on a really big, probably 5-year depression that I didn't even, I don't think my husband even recognized me. And we were going on these great trips and cruises. And I say in my book, I got sick, I got so run down. I ended up with, abscess tooth and the flu. Really, really sick with the flu. And we had kept our house, so we would go back and we were going to sell it. And I talk about it in the book about, what do you mean I don't have, where is the S and the cape and the, I thought I was Superman and, it really, it kicked me pretty hard. And when we finally came home, and I had just lost my German Shepherd at the time, suddenly really, and so that threw me for a loop. We didn't have children. We had four-legged kids. So that threw me a loop. So all of those things just came together, and it was a pretty rough time for me. I felt like I had no purpose. And I felt like, I'm young, and I feel good, and now I have no purpose when you're used to such a structure for all those years. And all of a sudden, you have this freedom and it's great to be able to retire. I retired, I was 58, just before my 59th birthday. That's lucky, to be able to do this, particularly with good health, fire service. You get aches and pains, we've all had surgeries and things. That comes with it really, but relatively, good shape. With the whole thing of just all of a sudden being a completely new environment, no structure, having friends, but just feel like I was just thrown into an abyss. And that's basically what happened to me. And it took me to come back to Florida, and I say be quiet because I was sick, and just be still and just really start thinking about life again. And that I think for me is when I started to think about, I need to write a book. I need to write this book, because people had asked me all the time, being the only female, and, they ask you, how was it? How are things being a female, and how, these calls. Of course, they always ask you what was the worst call you've ever been on, civilians do. And you're like, oh, we don't talk about that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't. When we're all together, it's like, you can't keep us quiet. But when we're with people who haven't ever done it, it's like, no, we don't do that. We don't talk that. So
do you think writing your book was the start of finding your purpose again?
Yes.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yes, it was. Like I said, I have always loved reading as well as writing. And I would keep a pad and a pen, pad of paper and a pen by my bed when I was on duty. And certain calls, certain things affect you more than others. And I would just write things, and I would write them down. And, I one time wrote a lot of poems, but then I just started writing the stories. And then people started really inquisitively asking me, how my career was, from the littlest kids to the elders that we would run on. And so I gradually put together stories. And then when I retired, and then it was funny because I said, I'm going to look for an editor. And through my nephew, he knew someone that was a really good editor, but she was very busy. And he said, she's not going to, you got to be really careful. I started sending out the query letters, like the little resumes you send out for to find an editor, see if they'd be interested. And I finally told him, like, I'm sending these letters out because I'm going to do this. I'm going to write this book. He said, well, listen, send her a chapter, send her your query letter, and she will tell you whether she's interested or not, or if she thinks it's even going to work or not. I sent it to her, and it was lightning in a bottle. She got back with me immediately and said, you're a writer, you're a storyteller. And yes. So I worked with her for a year, and it's amazing, like, a 12,000 word bunch of stories. She would push me and pull, and certain things she would tell me, no, you cannot put that in the book. And then there were other times I would go, oh, yes, I am going to put this in the book.
Right.
So I worked with her for a year. And then after that, she turned me over to another set of editors. And one that I'm still in contact with now. And they did really more of the proofreading. And in the meantime, people don't realize it. They say, oh, I'm going to write a book. But as you know, you're doing, the illustration, you're trying to find an illustrator or pictures, you're trying to get a book person to do a book cover for you. There's a lot to it, and the legalities, end up forming a business. And, I was not a business person. So all of that was kind of new. But in the meantime, then it got sent to proofreaders, and then it was, put together, and I'm proud of the book. I'm proud of it, and it was a process of love, but boy, it was hard work.
Yeah.
But I'm proud of it, and my message was to, get it out there and tell my story. Hopefully inspire some people.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing accomplishment, right? To just even have the idea and the guts and the bravery to put yourself out there, but then to finish it, I think is another huge element that so many people struggle with. They write a book and they get to like 90% and they're like, and it just sits on the shelf, right? So,
Right.
yeah,
Right. I've had a lot of people tell me that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And you as an author would know,
Yes. Well, I was one
It's
of them. I almost quit as well. Very, very close. I was like, it did its job for me. It was my
Mhm,
own therapy writing it. And then,
mhm.
yeah, I almost gave up and I was like, no, I can't waste the nuggets and what I have to share. I can't waste that and just let me learn from it. I have to let other people learn from it. Right.
Yes. Yes. And it's and it's funny because I enjoyed it. I mean, the process was hard, and I mean, to take it from like 12,000 words to a legitimate book. And again, the push and pull of going through things. And one of the funny things is one of the young editors that I was uh, turned over to in the end, we would go back and forth because she's young and she didn't realize like terminology,
Mhm.
and she kept changing my word when I would use me and my crew. She would change it to team.
Mm.
I say, no, we're not teams in the fire service. We're a crew. And I had to explain to her, and there were a lot of different things. It was kind of a funny process, but you have to think, generation wise, she's somebody in her 20s, or, completely different lingo if you work in an office or whatever. Then the fire service has a very distinct, military, paramilitary type, language. So
So this book was the launch of your purpose, kind of reigniting your purpose in your retirement.
mhm.
What's this looking like now? What's your purpose now in life?
Well, my purpose now is I've been going around and doing some signings, some podcasts, talking to people. And also I'm working on two different books. The one I'm really kind of working on, it'll take some time because people are kind of hard. It's kind of hard for some people to tell their stories. And that's the one, it's called Should Time Heal. The title could change, but I think Should Time Heal is a good
Sometimes, yeah.
title because
Okay.
people always say, does time heal? I say, should time heal?
Mm.
Because your experiences are what make you who you are. And maybe that's how we all grow as humans. So I'm working on that book. And then I just started something fun. I started writing a novel.
Yeah, I saw that.
I never thought I would do, I always dreamed of it,
Mm.
but I started doing it, and I'm finding myself fun. I mean, the characters are a bunch of rogue, retired firefighters, first responders,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just it's a really fun project, and they all have their characters,
Yep. It's
they're
kind of fun to create that, eh? Yeah. I can
yes,
see your
it
face light
is,
up.
because they kind of take on a mind of their own now.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've just started it. It's a few thousand words, and you know how novels have to be, they have to, you have to take your time and, really expand the story, and you don't know where it's going to go. You kind of think you do, but who knows?
Awesome.
And so I'm excited about it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So you mentioned family, the fire service family. Do you consider the
Mhm.
fire service a family? And how do you kind of look at that as a family if you do?
I I do, and it's kind of a funny thing because uh, my husband and I moved out of the area that we worked in when we got married, and we commuted over 100 miles to work, 130, 140 miles to work. And one of the reasons was firefighters and paramedics, first responders can be very clannish.
Mm.
And, people are always saying, oh, you're a firefighter, that sort of thing. And we felt it was important to move out of the environment and meet other people that do other things that are equally as important. Or, we were interested in having a life outside just firefighters.
Mm.
And so it's kind of funny because we moved away. We commuted for 25 years of our career. And not to say we didn't get together, but the one thing that I will say is we recently went to a reunion, and I'm in contact with them now, and it's so funny. You see people you hadn't seen since you retired or before that retired before you. And it just turns into this, wonderful environment of people that you go, wow, we did this, and some are, facing health issues. Some we've lost quite a few firefighters to, and paramedics to, cancer and things. But it is quite, it's like they always say brotherhood, but it's a sisterhood too. And it is like that. So, I'm always, happy if I go somewhere and someone's wearing a shirt, and I have no problem. I'll just say, hey, where do you work? Or, and then you just automatically have this common ground for the most part. And of course, me being a female, I've had them, I've had some of them be like, oh, really, you were a firefighter? Yeah, yes, I was.
Yeah.
In a big department.
Well, those people,
But it is fun.
it doesn't matter, does it?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm assuming going through the fire service, being one of two females, and in the 80s and 90s, you must have had some amazing mentors to kind of guide you through. What did those, you don't have to mention names per se, but what did those mentors give you to make you have a successful and long career?
Confident, and they had confidence in my abilities even before I did. They pushed me in a positive way. Now, I must mention too, there was a third female that came on. She got hired. She was in the academy and got hired right after us, and she was a trapeze artist in the circus.
Wow.
So she was really fit, and so she was the third, and we were each on different shift. And then, of course, when we merged with EMS, the paramedics, there were a lot of females, and they had to go to fire school and get their fire cert. But I was lucky to have mentors, and I have to say they were men. I mean, even when I went to paramedic school, I had actually, and I mentioned her in the book, one of the mentors, a female, that she was brilliant captain. She was just brilliant, and I just tried to learn from the people that I respected, male or female, and I worked hard, and in the fire service it was generally men, but I had some really good mentors that they did believe in me. They wouldn't let me, they didn't want to see me fail, and they knew that I had what it took. I was there for all the right reasons, and so I was lucky to work with a lot of good ones. And I won't say it was perfect. I had men and women, test me, particularly when I became an officer.
Right.
I had them, try to test me.
Which is probably common, right?
Yeah, it's common.
Leader. Yeah.
Test the new leader.
Mhm.
But I did have a reputation of being a good firefighter. I always say, and I said in the book, was I the best? No, but I worked with some brilliant ones, and I tried to learn from them. Working with some that I didn't have a whole lot of confidence in was probably one of my motivating reasons to become one myself.
Mhm.
And I say, if you see something, say something. We had, I have guys and women on my truck, particularly guys. Some of them had, pretty varied backgrounds in construction and, welding and lots of areas that I certainly didn't. So I would ask for their opinion, but ultimately the decision is mine as the officer on a scene.
Yeah, I think that's the best way, right? Having diverse teams crews, having diverse crews that bring all those kind of skill sets,
Sure.
right? Then you can start utilizing them to their strengths, right? So,
And we had some brilliant paramedics. Broward County is extremely aggressive and assertive. And let me tell you, I would tell anyone some of the best that there are. And some of them went on to become doctors. A lot of them were nurses on their off days, which I thought was crazy. I was like, oh my God, how could you be on a rescue truck for 12 hours? You're dropping people off, and then you get off duty and you're going to the same hospital, or you're working at a hospital seeing people you dropped off 24. I couldn't do it.
no.
But they did. And so I did, I did listen and trained with a lot of them as well, and had them on my truck. And like I said, my advice to people is, you bid stations according to your seniority and your rank. And I got to a point where they called me the old timer, and I could have bid, an easy station and all of that. And I didn't want that. I wanted to continue to learn. And I like the variety of being on, a rescue truck or a fire truck, all the different types of apparatus.
Well, what an exciting,
kept me fresh.
Yeah, exciting career, right? Every day is totally different.
Right.
Yep.
Right. But there are people that, they get a bid in a station and they stay at that station their whole career. And I just, it would really bore me,
Yeah, for sure.
Everybody's an individual with that.
So for the listeners listening right now and thinking, I want to join the fire service, or I'm just fresh into the fire service, what kind of tidbits or nuggets would you share with males or females joining the fire service today? What kind of wisdom would you share?
I would say, show up ready to work, show up early, check out, don't wait for somebody to ask you to check out the truck or clean the station. We take care of the station as well. Know where every piece of equipment is. And if you need help, ask, but otherwise you need to check everything out every shift. Be a sponge, learn, continue your education, because you will throughout your career. As far as living in the station environment, we all live together. Is there's different duties every day. When you're cleaning the kitchen, the next day you're doing bays. Be assertive. Be the first one up from the dinner table, particularly your first year. Be the first one up from the dinner table. Start clearing those dishes. Grab the mop. And, I say in my book, the story about teaching the young man about cleaning bathrooms. He didn't know. Younger people, maybe they didn't know, their mothers or whomever did that sort of thing, and they didn't know how to properly do it. And I talk about, taking him aside and teaching him, and then him thanking me for not embarrassing him. And I find that with the younger generations, making meals, a lot of them never cooked. And so, you have them gather around when I cooked. My husband was really a great cook and helped a lot of them when he was on duty. But I would make, pot roasts and have them help me, or chili or whatever. And as I came up through the ranks, it became harder to cook. So, it was kind of, they cooked.
Right.
But you just have to be a willing participant in the fire service. You're living together, running calls under the most, can be the most stressful things. And, take it in stride and learn from it. Learn from every situation, whether it's at the station. And if something's bothering you, again, like we talked about before, take that person aside and have a conversation. Yeah. And put it out there. And don't, like I said, don't get too familiar. Like I say that to the women because, some of them I thought were getting too familiar too quick. It's easy. Like, when I started at the fire station, or coming in the station, I shook a lot of people's hands for many years. Just shook hands. You get to know a few of them, and they'd give you a hug when they saw you, kind of thing. And that took a long time. But don't get too familiar. Draw your line in the sand. Be confident, but don't be afraid to. Don't be arrogant. Don't be afraid to ask. Continue your education. I mean, to me, that was so important. Not only the training that you're going to have as part of a department, but, sign up for school, get your fire officer 1. And, really most urban departments now, you have to be a paramedic. So you're going to be both. And keep yourself as in physically great shape as you can. And just be willing to do the right thing for people. I think that's a big tidbit for me, is just because somebody's, underneath a park bench and smelly and awful, that's somebody's, that's someone's loved one.
Yeah, 100%.
Treat them with respect and take as good a care of them as you would want someone to treat you or one of your loved ones.
Yep.
Don't just blow people off and say, oh, sign this, you're fine. Go above and beyond and take good care of people. And they're scared to death. And that's what I would tell people is, you don't know how scared people are when they're calling 911 because they're having an emergency. They're scared to death. They're not familiar with all the stuff that goes on. And particularly if you're putting them in the back of a rescue truck and all the stuff that goes with that, with, starting an IV or, whatever it may be, backboarding them. And I would tell them, just remember that treat them with dignity. And, the funny thing is I worked with a lot of, young guys, and they're young and good looking, and we'd get these calls and it'd be an elderly person, an elderly woman. And I would always make it a point to say, they were like, I'm sorry I called. Look at what we showed up for you. Guys, how can you not look at them? I said, we're going to take the best care of you. And that's how I looked at it. We're going to take the best care of you that we possibly can. And on fires, we're going to take care of your property. Yeah, maybe a trailer. It's your home.
100%.
We're not going to let it burn unless we have to, obviously. We're going to take good care of your things. It's your property.
I would say sometimes firefighters kind of forget that, right? They're in it so much they forget to tell that person, Mrs. Smith on the side of the road, about the spine board, about the hard collar, how that's going to feel, because it's so routine for us, right? But yeah, that's the scariest moment for that person, right? In their entire life.
It's like, don't grab that person's arm and stick a needle in it without telling them. Talk to them, talk to them. And, of course, all the other stuff, medically you have to ask, be kind to them, talk to them and assure them that you're there, you and your crew, you're going to take the best care of them as you possibly can. And,
can I jump back to, you said familiar. I'm just trying to wrap my head around what that means to you. You said being familiar.
Being too familiar?
Too familiar, yes.
Well, I would say, there are people that maybe they weren't on the job that long and, they would come in and, give somebody a big old smooch on the cheek or sit on their lap or leave their things. Like we had single bathrooms for a long time and now you have women's and men's. And I used to be the only woman and I would tell the guys, listen, you can use my bathroom after I'm done, just clean up after yourself. But I would never leave my clothes laying around where, I kept everything really neat and was respectful of the other people that I lived with.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's kind of my advice to women. I mentor them. It's like,
Gotcha.
Don't be familiar with people. Shake their hand, be professional, that introduce yourself. And as you work with people and get to know them, then things can change. You develop a rapport, particularly when you run calls with them and get to know them.
Cindy, it's been kind of great to kind of go through your life and the experiences. I'm so happy that majority of your experience was very, very well kind of received by yourself and a blessing. I can tell that by the stories in your book, but also just kind of sitting down with you today. So I'd love to hear, what would be one message that you love to our listener to hear today that, just is going to inspire them to be that person that you admired so much in your career?
Be your authentic self. You're not perfect. You're going to make mistakes. Hopefully not repeat the mistakes. Learn from your mistakes. And, I say in my book, one thing I did say is, it's not a male bashing book at all. And I
didn't find that.
No. And it's not meant to be. I didn't write that book. But I would just say, it's such a great profession and it's really hurting right now. As long as there's just not a lot of people that are getting into it, as well as, probably other professions as well. But I think people realize, it's a tough job. It takes time to go through and get your education so that you can qualify for getting a job with a department, and it's continuous. But, have confidence. I think it was so rewarding, and I'm so passionate about it to be able to genuinely help people. And that, to me, you have to have. I always say firefighters have lion's heart. We we want to do the right thing. It's kind of in our blood. And then when you get into the medicine as well, you just want to help people. You want to be that person. And, even in retirement now, you see people are struggling. It's just an automatic thing to say, hey, can I help you? Can I get this for you? I'll take, And I just think, people need to be kind, and you need to be strong and firm, be kind, and just realize there's a lot of people out there that are having a really rough time.
Yeah. I think that's great that you mentioned that, because I truly think that being a compassionate, kind leader is a superpower. You don't have to be a authoritarian style leader yelling and screaming to be a leader. You can be a compassionate leader for sure. And I know you mentioned that in your book as well, right? That you didn't want to be that.
Yeah. I've worked with people that were like that. I'm sure you have too. And boy, that makes for a rough shift.
You might get the job done.
Inspire,
Yeah, you might get the job done, but you're definitely not inspiring the team.
No.
So saying that, I'd love to hear, for the female firefighters listening right now, what inspirational message would you send to them from another fellow female firefighter?
Again, have the confidence that you can do it. Have integrity and honesty, and just welcome it with open arms, but don't be blinded by people thinking that you can't do it because you're a female.
Right.
Don't be just don't be blinded by people that there's always going to be people, and I will say men, but there's always going to be people, and women can be pretty catty, but stand up for yourself and know that you can do it, and just have the heart and the soul to do it, and continue your education, and that will bring the confidence. Confidence equals confidence. You know what I mean? It will happen once you're on the job. But if it's a career that interests you, go for it. And no, it's not going to be an easy one to get, but keep your blinders on and your focus, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's an amazing career. I would never have traded the 24 years that I put in for anything else. 100%. Yeah. So how can people learn more about Cindy, and where can they find your book?
Well, they can find it on Amazon, but I do have a website. It's sisterandbrotherhood.com, and it talks about my background. It has my bio, and then it has contact information that they can contact me at contact at Sister and a Brotherhood, or 5-alarm fire at 5alarmhealth at gmail.com. But if they if they want to order the book, it's available on Amazon. If you go to some of the other bookstores, they probably have it, but everybody today, it seems like they go through Amazon. So it's available on Amazon. I don't have an audio book, and I've been asked that so much. I would like to do it and do it myself. I was told at the time that it's a totally different process, and it's difficult. But then I've had a lot of people say it's kind of strange. It's like, I don't read a book. I don't read books. I listen to audio. And so that would be something I'd be interested in, finding somebody that I could do it, get it done and get it out there.
Fantastic. Is there a question that you wish I asked that I did not ask you?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Wow. I think you covered it really well, and I think it's been a wonderful interview, and you've asked me some really interesting questions that you can tell that you were in the field as well, and it just comes from a different perspective. I think you've done a great job. I hope that I've answered your question.
100%. I just like that's it's actually a question that I ask everyone. Is
everyone?
Is there a question that because some people are like, oh, I wish he asked me this when.
Yeah. Well, I think for the question is that you ask is, how do you see yourself, now, and what are you doing? And that's an important question, because I did write the book has been out for a little while, and now I'm just it's so funny with a book. I think, if you had a name, if you're famous, you could write a book and it's out there immediately. And people are saying it, but it's a slow burn. I said, it's a slow burn. It's not a big fire. So it's funny now, it's starting to really filter out there and get out there. And it's not, nothing happens overnight, I should say.
Yeah. The biggest part about having a book is not writing it, it's marketing it.
Yes.
Yeah. 100%.
Yes. And if you've been a civil servant like you have been, and me, that's a whole new world, it's kind of like, oh my gosh.
Whole new skill set.
It's a whole new skill set. But again, I'm proud of what I did, and I'm very passionate about the fire service. I'm hoping to continue to inspire other young people, men and women, to jump in there, as well as giving other people that are interested in the fire service about joining, and older people, an insight to what it's like. It was my experience, what it was like.
Yeah, I enjoy those, because there's so many misperceptions out there about what the fire service is. If you're, Mary Smith on the side of the road, really don't know much about what goes on behind the scenes, right? So
no, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't. Yeah, they think it. They used to tell you, oh, you firefighters sit in a firehouse and play checkers. Well, not really.
Yeah, I wish I could have done that, but no, there was no time for that.
There's no time for that. Yeah, there's a lot more to it, but it's worthwhile.
Yes. So I want to leave with my last question for season 2, which is, what areas in your life do you need more support in?
For me, I'm finding new friends. I'm in a new area, and just I'm in a new area, and I do have a few friends, but just developing friendships. And when you're it's hard when you're retired, because a lot of people are still working, or they have children, or they have obligations, and I like people of all ages. And I remember my mother always saying to me, I don't want to hang out with old people. All they do is talk about their aches and pains and their pills they take. And, I used to laugh at her, but say, Mom, you're old. And she said, yeah. So I kind of, now that I'm older, old, I find myself, I like people of all ages. I like interesting people. And I have friends in their 20s, obviously, their stage in life, in 30s, they have families, but what I'm hoping to do is just to continue to get maybe more involved in the community, and just really having developing really good friendships in this new area that I'm in. My husband and I both.
Yes. Yeah, that's so important.
You do that. Socialization is so important.
It is. Yeah.
And
even if you're an introvert, socialization is super critical, right? So
they're finding out how important it is, with people, that you have to be among a community, particularly as you get older, for a lot of reasons. But I mean, there's people that we know, that relatives, they lived out in the middle of nowhere, and then you get older, it's difficult. You need to be somewhere and be engaged with different things.
Yeah, the fire service, well, for me personally, and a lot of people that I've interviewed, is our friends are in the fire service. All of our friends are in the fire service, or police, or ambulance. And for myself included, I've had very few friends that were not in the fire service during my career, right? So prior to, friends everywhere. And then I really niched into the fire service friends, and it's like, it definitely made an impact. Great friends, but very, very kind of siloed in that aspect.
Limiting. It's limiting. Yeah. And I think too, it's like, even though I've been retired, in my, I'm always going to be considered, I always feel like, I'm always going to be considered a firefighter, paramedic. I mean, it's just something it's in my blood. I mean, and that's kind of, I don't know if you feel like that. It doesn't matter to retire. It's just, and people say, oh, you were that once, and it kind of irritates me. It's like, no, I worked, but I always consider myself part of that. And again, when I told you we moved out of the area, that was a big deal to us to develop friendships, the people that did other things.
Yeah.
And so I think it is important.
Yeah.
If you just hang around people that do the same thing, I mean, you kind of are cheating yourself of really wonderful people out there who do all kinds of great stuff.
I agree. Well, Cindy, it's been a pleasure to connect with you, and congrats on your book and the 2 that are coming out in a short little bit. That's exciting to hear.
Well, I don't know about how short, but they'll come out eventually.
That's good. Eventually is better than never. So I appreciate your time and sharing a little inspiration to our, maybe up and comers, but also the ones who are getting close to retirement as well. So thank you very much. Any final words?
Well, just again, I want to thank you so much for reaching out, and I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Fantastic. Likewise.
And maybe the next book comes out, we'll speak again.
Yes, that'd be an honor. That'd be an honor.
So,
all right, everyone. Well, check
you.
out Sister in the Brotherhood and on Amazon, and you can connect with Cindy through the email she's suggested. And I hope you enjoy this great conversation. Until next time, stay well.
Thank you for tuning in to Beneath the Helmet. We hope that this podcast has provided you with valuable insights into the world of firefighters' health and wellness. Remember, caring for your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is crucial to achieving optimal performance. Join us next time on Beneath the Helmet for more inspiring conversations. Until then, stay well.